Lombardi.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're missing Dan Baruch. Let me see, Tom Cunningham, Kathy's struggling, Kevin Kenyon's struggling, but we can.
Kathy's on the phone. Kathy's on the phone, so she's logging in.
Okay. Let me just do a quick survey, see who's here. Okay. So Justin is working with people, it looks like right now, trying to get people on board. So yeah, we can start, Joe, and we can provide any quick highlights at the end of each topic for people that might have missed.
Okay. So as you might see on your screen, that Ken Parker's not here today. So I'm going to fill in, hopefully, do the best job I can. This is meeting number 7 of the LGPC Ad Hoc Septic System Committee. I want to thank everybody for attending. Just to remind everybody that the format of the meeting is that after each section, we'll ask the members of the committee to give their comments, if there's any, and then we'll open it up to the public and go on to the next section. So to start off, I guess we'll ask Dave to give us an update on the highlights of the final proposed initiative that we're looking at for the septic inspection program.
Okay.
Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Sorry, everyone, for the struggles getting on. Zoom is an ongoing challenge sometimes for us, but we usually get it figured out. So the agenda that everybody has in front of them is essentially a blueprint for 6 months worth of our collective work on developing the ideas for a septic inspection program for Lake George, and also some potential new standards. So today's meeting is just going to be largely me and Joe Thuen going through kind of what we envisioned currently as something that we're hoping to move forward with. And I'm going to take you through the inspection program, and then we're going to ask the committee members for thoughts, comments, questions. And then after that, we'll ask the general public, other people that are not on the committee, if they have any thoughts, questions, comments. Joe Thuen is then going to take you through the standards and do that same thing. So this meeting can be all of 15 minutes long, or it could be as long as you'd like it to be if you have any thoughts. So with that, I will jump right in, and I'm just going to go right off of the agenda and kind of read through each of these and give a little bit of backstory, maybe where needed. So the highlights of our final proposed initiative, of course, nothing is in place yet. This is just a kind of a jumping off point, moving into some potential regulations. So first, inspections of residential and commercial structures within 500 feet of Lake George shoreline and 100 feet of streams once every 5 years. That equates to about 2,800 properties in total. It's about 45% of the septic systems in the basin. That would equate to about 1/5 of the properties inspected every year, or ballpark 600 properties inspected every year. We've had long discussions back and forth about the best way to accommodate these inspections, whether it be in-house agency staff, outside trained inspections, or a combination hybrid type of model. And I think we've collectively come to a decision that if we can have a reasonably costed program with agency staff, that would be preferred. So I think that's what we're looking at right now. Along those lines of cost, the annual fee for properties in the inspection program area, looking at $75 per year for residential, $150 per year commercial. And with those funds, we do see the program as being fiscally self-sustaining without requirement for additional funds from either Albany or our partner municipalities, nonprofits, or any other outside source. Looking at the inspections themselves, we have some language drafted internally talking about what would be included in the inspections and what would pass, what would fail. A lot of it is based on programs that are currently set up in the Finger Lakes and the town of Queensbury, town of Bolton, the Warren County draft law. And the long and short essentially is if there's any failed components that need to be corrected based on a failure that's very evident on the inspection, those will need to be corrected and fixed within 6 months' time. If they're more substantive and it would require engineering design, approvals, those types of things, and the commission would grant excess time to make sure that those are completed properly. And then there's another category of systems that we're looking at, which we consider substandard systems, ones that do not meet current standards, but they are functioning. We can't find any failure with it, but they are perhaps undersized. And those would be required to be upgraded within 5 years or before the next inspection period. So each one of these 6 items has considerable backstory to it and a lot of alternatives that went into them. And this is what we've proposed to, quote, settle on as a draft inspection program. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our committee members to say if you've had any comments, questions. Hopefully you folks have had a chance to read the concept paper that's been sent to you each, and it's been on our website now for perhaps a week. So with that, that is the quick summary of the inspection program. And after these comments, we'll go into the technical standards. So we open it up. Please raise your hand if you would, and I will try to keep an eye and see. So Kathy Munsell, you have questions, comments?
I just want to say that I think you guys did a phenomenal job in putting together a document that works in favor of educating the regular man like me, you know, someone running a business and covering all the different bases of, well, is that really what it was? What about this? So I think, you know, you've answered all of my questions. I brought it to my staff and said, what do you think if you got this at home? And it was as I would have expected, kind of initially kind of fearful, like, oh God, what's this going to cost me? I said, read it, stick with it, read it. And I have to say, the 3 people I gave it to said, this makes a lot of sense. I think I can see why it should happen.
Oh.
So kudos to you for really working through all the difficulties that bring fear to people's minds and try to run away from those of us asking this question versus saying, I'm here to help and work forward.
Okay. That's great to hear, Kathy. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else from the committee? Questions, thoughts? I can see most of you. Let me get to the next page. Anyone else? Walt Lender.
Dave, just a quick question on the annual fee. Does that amount to a permit that you're essentially issuing?
We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. For those of you that maybe have been around for the original program back in the early 90s, the commission did issue wastewater discharge permits for those properties that were in the program. Joe might be able to answer more on this detail, but we haven't talked about a discharge permit. We're more looking at a traditional inspection program like some of the other lakes have put in place. But Joe Thillen, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I don't. So this would more mirror like an annual boat registration fee, where we don't send out those stickers anymore. So just sort of a standard fee, an opportunity to touch base with folks, educate them, remind them of the system in the ground, but not issuing those interim permits, just basically as an administrative efficiency more than anything else.
Okay, just checking. Thanks. Seems fair.
Thanks, Walt. Anyone else on the committee with any thoughts, comments, questions? Chris.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. Let me lower my hand before I forget, but I'll keep it up constantly for you, Dave. Anyway.
We appreciate it.
I just want to thank you as well and the commission for the work putting it out there. I echo what Kathy just said regarding the document and the way it's worded. I would make one suggestion, and you were pretty consistent when you say, the need for the program was to address the failing, and most of the time you stated malfunctioning or antiquated systems. I would just make sure you do that. You didn't do that everywhere, because if you just say failing systems, I think people will jump on that and question this. So I would just make sure that you consistently say failing and antiquated or malfunctioning, and that way it spreads a wider net. And I think because that's, as we know, failing can be very subjective, and we don't know what that means. Different things to different people, but when we say aging or antiquated, it definitely covers things that may not be failing. And then I had one more question and a couple points. There was a number of 3,400 or so properties, but now I'm seeing that it's 2,800. Was it that there's 3,400 properties in the CEA, or I'm just wondering where that change came in that number?
Sure. I can start and then I'll ask Jason to jump in. So the 3,400 was originally when we were, the first cut of the analysis was all properties that would touch Lake George within 500 feet. So let's say your property was 1,000 feet deep and your structure was 900 feet off the shoreline. You were originally included in the septic program area. What we wanted to do is maintain a level of honesty and consistency, and said, where's the actual structure? So some of the properties may be 1,000 feet deep and the structure is 50 feet back, others may be 900 feet back, and they clearly have different impacts on the lake. So what we had Jason do over the period of 2 days was go through every property that was on that 500-foot line around Lake George and determine whether that structure was in the inspection area or outside the inspection area. And that knocked off a fair amount of structures that were actually outside of that area that we're really concerned about for Lake George, the actual critical area, environmental area of 500 feet. And Jason, there was some other additional information on the streams, I believe, or I know the wetlands we talked about. Jason, you want to chime in?
Sure. So I also looked at streams and I added it to just be the streams that are flowing into Lake George instead of all streams in the park. That is, the ones that are going in the AAS streams. And there were some that were Class C that were outside flowing out of the park that got grabbed by the GIS analysis. We looked at wetlands for a bit and we didn't see that there were many being grabbed at the 100-foot buffer mark. So those we did not include either. But it really was just kind of like a parcel by parcel, looking at, to the best we could, where the septic tank would be using this structure as a proxy.
Well, that had to be fun.
It wasn't 2 days, it was like 4 or 5, but
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, because that kind of echoes what some of my concerns are. Because I just feel there should be a wider, this needs to be a larger area. Because right now, you got a property, a structure within 100 feet of a stream, that its septic system is downgrading. It's probably downgrading to the stream. So it seems to me that we are going to be losing 3/4 of the area that should be within along streams at that 100 feet, So, I mean, if a home is 125 feet away, its septic system is going to be within 100 feet. So I think we're missing critical areas. So we need to make sure we capture that. So I think we need to expand this. I, for one, support, making it larger to try to capture all properties in the basin, but clearly we are not capturing all the systems within the critical environmental area as being said. So we could be missing a large number of those along the lake. If we are excluding properties along wetlands, that's a critical water resource we need to protect. Same with streams. So I'm concerned about that, very concerned actually. Secondly, I know I've echoed this on this meeting as well as with the technical. I really would recommend surcharging systems for inspections. I realize it could be difficult. How do you prove it? But just because it's difficult, we shouldn't walk away, because that's how we're going to find that systems are challenged and can be compromising the resources. So those are, I think, the first being pretty strong. We got to make sure that we capture the systems that are causing impacts and need to expand this program area. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Tom Jarrett, you had your hand up. You're on mute, Tom.
My comments are similar to Chris's first comments regarding the language and the terminology. We need to be, and I know you're already working on this in-house, but need to be very specific about what a functional system is, a substandard system, and what redevelopment are. So make sure that's clearly defined. You may not need to put it into the publications that go out to the public initially, but eventually it's going to have to be disseminated so everybody understands the definitions. Just, and I know you know that, I'm just bringing it out again. Yeah, that was my comment.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, Joe happened to be on the phone with Tom just yesterday as we were going through this very topic of the concept paper was put out before we got into some of the finite details about the differences between failing systems, substandard systems, and compliance systems. And so over the next couple of days, I'm going to update the concept document to kind of more clearly identify these processes as we go. So today's meeting is really to kind of get general understanding and consensus. And we know not everybody's going to be 100% satisfied with everything that's in here. But I think if we're looking at a program that's making sense for the majority of our ad hoc committee, then I believe the commission is going to take that as the action to move forward with. Any other committee members first that have any questions, thoughts, comments they want to make on the inspection program proposal itself?
Hey, Dave, it's Hannah. Can you guys hear me?
Hannah, how are you?
I've been having horrible technical difficulty.
Yeah, sorry. about
I
that.
did pop in. It's okay. I did pop something in the chat for everybody to look over. Part of the state of the state address that Governor Hochul had stated. She does want to put money into septic system upgrades in the Adirondack region, and actually specifically stated Lake George and other Adirondack lakes. So I'm hoping that following that plan, there's going to be another round for septic system replacement money. So as you guys are doing these inspections, I'll keep you guys in the loop as far as funding opportunities for homeowners, so it can offset a little bit of the cost if they do have to do a full replacement.
Okay, that's great, Hannah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Other committee members, questions, thoughts, comments? I'm not seeing any other committee members, so I'm going to go to Lorraine Ruffin, who I believe, Kathy LaBombard. I apologize. Kathy, I didn't see you.
Kathy, you're on mute. There you go.
I just want to echo Chris Novitsky's comments. I totally feel that this should be a wider area. And I know we discussed yesterday the difficulties of getting there ahead of time to surcharge the system. But if we're going to do this, we have to do it right. And I truly believe those are discharging this, surcharging the system has to somehow, we've got to make it work. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. The idea on surcharging the system, we've looked into some level of detail. So the town of Bolton requires surcharging of the system. The town of Queensbury goes another path where they do not require surcharging of the system, but they require that the tank cannot be pumped out so they can see what level the water is in the distribution box. I've had these conversations several times with Dave Haddon, and the challenges with surcharging a system, as our technical committee was talking yesterday, are to what level do you consider the surcharging of a system? Is it flushing the toilet once, or is it putting 300 gallons into the system and waiting 2 hours to find out if the water is going to be flowing back in? And how do we confirm that on a septic inspection without spending 4 hours at that property? All these ideas came forth before we even started considering these challenges. Dave Haddon brought them forward and said this is why the town of Queensbury chose not to do that, was the level of consistency and simply the pragmatism of not being able to do it on an effective basis to keep kind of the level of playing field within that. And we can continue to talk about those ideas. We just have to have a program that makes sense in terms of the timing and the efficiency, because there's also going to be a septic hauler involved, and they're not going to wait 3 hours while the system is surcharged. So these are conversations that we can continue to have, Chris and Kathy, and anybody else interested. But that's kind of where we're landing right now. Claudia Berger, you're on the committee.
Well, I just have a problem because what we're dealing with here is dwellings now that are being rented and are being more than maxed out to capacity. So during the 4 months of the year, from June through September, that we really have a lot of people on the lake, these homes are going to be maxed out as far as the septic system use. And I just would like to cover our base there. And I totally get it, Dave. I know just where you're coming from, but we ought to be able to figure something out. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Kath. Like I said, we can keep talking about it. Claudia, you're on the committee. You have some thoughts?
Thanks, Dave. The concept paper looks great. You may have already talked about this, but a question I had was, what if a property owner wants to go forward with their inspection and they're not in the 5-year window for their property? That the park commission says, you're going to be in this window of time. Did you already talk about how you might accelerate someone's inspection if they wanted to?
So if, for example, they were in year 3 and they wanted to be in year 1?
Yeah.
We could certainly accommodate that. Part of the idea of having commission staff be the inspectors in the program is not only are we going to be hiring 2 new seasonal staff, but we're going to cross-train 6 people in the office if we do have an abundance of workload. I think it's our expectation that when we start, we're going to have the people that want to get it out of the way right up front. We're going to have a bit of a bubble, and then we're going to have a bit of a lag. And then we're going to be sending out the letters saying, listen, you have 3 more months to get your septic inspected. And then at the end, the last month, we're going to have a huge swath of people that get their septic system inspected. And that's going to require additional commission staff to take that. I think that on the off chance that somebody wants to move up their inspection earlier in that program, we'll be able to accommodate that internally.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, let me do a quick peruse. Bill Mason, I see your hand. There you are, Bill.
I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to get my hand thing to go up like everybody else's. I'm on my phone here and it's not, there's a learning curve here.
Okay.
I too want to say thank you to everybody, all the members of this committee for all the time that they put in. I really appreciate it. It's been a learning experience for me all the way along and it'll continue to be, but thank you, everybody. I want to echo Chris has brought up, and then Kathy said something about the expanding into the outside of what we've defined as the CEA. And I had been ready to go along with this, or I was sort of okay with it. But what Chris said about the streams and only 100 feet, maybe there's a way we could expand on our 100 feet around streams or something else. At first I thought that we should do all of the homes in the basin, but just do them on a less regular basis, maybe every 10 years for the homes outside of what we call the CEA. I still think something like that is a good idea. And I don't know how to deal with it best. As I said, when Chris was talking, I came up with a few different ways that I thought might be a compromise, but I think we should look at that again.
Okay, thanks, Bill. What we can do is ask Jason to take a broader swath around streams and see what that brings in for additional properties. Take a little work internally, but we can certainly have those numbers in the next several days.
And on that topic, just for clarity, the work that Jason did that removed whatever 400 some odd properties, the way the regs are written and intended is that any wastewater system within 100 feet of streams or within 500 feet of the lake will definitely be in the program. The goal here was where the development area is clearly outside the CEA is to remove those parcels that, if it's a large parcel and a corner of it clips the CEA or clips a stream, is to remove those. So that way we're not getting 400 people calling us and saying, you have no idea what you're doing. And my house is, my septic is, thousands of feet away from the critical environmental area. So again, all systems by reg will be in the program. What Jason's exercise did was just try to refine the folks that we're communicating with, so that way, we have the best available data on who we anticipate to be in the program.
Thank you, Joe.
Can Can I clarify on that?
Sure.
So if the system is technically in the CEA, even though they may not get the communication because you've deemed them out, they'd still technically be subject to the jurisdiction of the Park Commission.
Yes, so if the system's in the CEA, then it's part of the inspection program. So,
Of course, it's probably very unlikely that if the house is hundreds of feet away, that they would have run their septic line. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let me see, any other committee members, comments, questions, thoughts? All right, not seeing any. I know Lorraine has had her hand up for quite a while. Lorraine?
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. I hope everybody can hear me. I'd just like to thank Dave and the commissioners and the staff for their excellent work. You know, it looks like you've gone over all the existing programs in the state and elsewhere, and you've picked the best practices, you know, from those programs. You also listened to what people were saying, you know, during our various meetings and taking that into consideration. And so I want to thank you for that, you know, for listening. And just to add to what people have been saying, such as Chris, about the wetlands, this morning I was out walking and half of one block on Assembly Point has been raised of all vegetation. It borders our swamp or wetlands. The area slopes right down to the to the wetlands, and it's obvious that that's where the septic system is going to be placed. And so they're going to be within the the 100 feet, whatever you require for the wetlands. So I think that does bear more scrutiny. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure we'll be taking this up with the town of Queensbury, and watching that development very closely as to where the septic is going to be placed. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Lorraine. Next, we have David Miller had his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And on behalf of the Adirondack Council, I want to also commend the commission for its outstanding work on the concept paper. And a few points I had was, I agree with Chris and Tom's comments earlier, and I just wanted to note that and the important issues they raised there. And I want to build on what Hannah said a little bit on the septic replacement funds. I didn't see, but maybe I missed it, if there was a reference to that program at all in the concept paper, and that might be something when you're tweaking it, you want to consider, because there are resources available to help residents with that. And for the Pacific reference that Hannah mentioned to, in the governor's State of the State booklet, it's on page 166 through 167. And it talks about HABs and increased funding for the septic replacement program. And it specifically notes the connection that failing septic systems have to HABs and other water quality problems. So that's something just I wanted folks to be aware of, and building on what Hannah said in moving forward, because hopefully we can push on. I know statewide there's an effort to push for more funding in that program and more funding to counties like Warren and Essex.
Very good. Thanks, Dave. Carol Collins, I see your hand up.
Hey, Dave. Hi, everybody. Let's see. Oddly enough, I agree with Chris Novitsky, Tom Jarrett, Kathleen LaBombard, Bill Mason, Lorraine, and others who all feel that we need to expand this area. It's not enough to say that, okay, this is where the line stops, where this load of nutrients doesn't get to the lake and this one does. There's no miracles in this CEA area. When we look at the streams, for example, we measure it as a distance from the stream where these houses or septics are located, which is really an incorrect way. I'm sure you know this, Dave. You've had such great experience with this whole thing. Really, you need to look at the euphoric zone, which is that zone where the water expands up and around the stream. It may go out 300 feet. It may go out 10 feet. But that's the zone from there that we really want to be looking at. And if you're just looking at it, I know it's difficult in terms of doing this on paper kind of thing, because you can't really check out everything. But the assumption that you're just looking at it from the stream beds or from the mean of the whatever, it is not enough, because that's not where the water is going to, where the water ends really for the streams. It goes beyond the streams is what I'm trying to say. So the 100 feet is not nearly enough. As far as surcharging, I think that's a no-brainer. By not checking these areas in the uplands, you're going to see more expansions of homes and things like that as we rapidly develop our uplands, which we are in the process of doing. Just look at Bolton or wherever you want to look at. And so to neglect them is really neglecting the lake. So I think we really have lots of reasons to expand it. I don't know if we're talking about the new proposed standards too. Are we talking about that too?
Not right now. We're talking about
Okay,
that.
all right, okay. Sorry. If you could, right now, you spoke about those definitions. Can you just sort of read them to us right now for what, a functional system is? I don't know if those are prepared or not, but, and the reason I say this, Dave, is
Failures
some
you're
of us,
saying, or substandard?
what?
Are you saying the failures or substandards?
Well, any of those definitions.
I don't know if I want to read the entire page of it right here for the committee, but do you have a question specifically?
Yeah, I want to know what they are.
Okay.
So,
right. Joe can probably give you a quick synopsis without going into every detail of everything that's considered a failure. But I don't know, Joe, if you want to provide 30 seconds.
Or you could do this. Some of these things, like I didn't know to look for the concept paper until you just said it. And there's just a handful of us that keep showing up at these meetings, and I know you're mostly interested in, in the actual committee themselves, but if we could even be aware somehow that these material, like something came up, like this concept paper came out, that would be helpful. And in that, you could even at least let us know what the definitions are, and then you don't have to talk about them here, but we should know what they are. And I guess that's it. Oh, except to say, I know Dave Floyd, he's not here today, right?
Correct.
He was worried about having enough haulers, and I called IBS because they do ours and stuff, and I asked them if they could accommodate this program. And this is just one hauler, and I said, in other words, could you put 5 more hauls on in a day if you had to? And she said yes. I said, could you do 10? But like tomorrow, could you do 10? She goes, well, not really. We'd have to do something. She goes, but I'd like to get it up to 20 if we could. So, I know that's been on Dave's mind, and these guys are ready to accommodate that. So I think we could check that off the list if we want to.
Yeah, we had a similar conversation with Hometown Septic, and they had no problem with accommodating the increase.
Good. Okay, that's it.
All right, thanks, Carl.
Thanks a lot for this.
Absolutely. Tom Jarrett, I saw you had your hand up and down. Do you have any follow-up?
I was going to comment that, although I obviously agree with Carol, take that note, Carol. I think we're going to get into the weeds here if we get into the definition. So maybe you can provide it to the committee members in writing at some point. We can revisit that another time.
Very good. Okay. Claudia, I think I see your hand.
Thanks, Dave. On the topic of getting overwhelmed, have you talked to the towns? I know one of the things that I got in pushback all the time on the county proposal was that towns were afraid they were going to be overwhelmed with applications for new approvals or changes to people's septic plans. I know I don't see Dan on here. Anyway, any movement with the towns?
Yeah, absolutely. We contacted every single town and Washington County to ask that very question. And thankfully, unanimously, every town said they could accommodate that level of workload. We even broke down, we asked them for the amount of work that would be coming in front of them. We equated that to the failure rate that the town of Queensbury was finding, which is about 17%. Did all the math and presented it to each of the towns in Washington County and said, would you be able to handle this additional workload? And they all came back and said they would be able to do so. So we were very happy to hear that, because that's been a concern of ours, of overwhelming the approving municipalities. And then all of a sudden it becomes a problem on the approval process. So we're at least happy to report at this stage that those conversations have happened in some level of detail. And everybody, our biggest concern, of course, is Washington County, because John Graham does 3 towns worth himself. And that's a challenge. But I believe, Joe, unless I'm misstating it, I believe even John said that he would be able to accommodate that level of work unless there was something unexpected that came up. And then, of course, if there was more time that was needed, of course, it would be granted. So, Joe, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think that covers it well. And one of the things that went into the 5-year replacement for substandard systems is affording that extra time for the systems that are functioning, but obviously don't need the immediate attention of a failure, something that's having a breakout, an immediate hazard. So having that longer time period for replacement is meant to allow a little flexibility with that review process. Finding an engineer, a contractor, getting a permit or a variance, these things can take some time. So that's why for those repairs that aren't as significant, they're going to get done within a 5-year period, but afford some flexibility to the landowner and the municipality with respect to time frame.
Thanks, Joe. I see one more hand with Mr. Novitsky.
Hey, Dave, I just want to thank you for reaching out to the towns. The numbers get thrown, but it's after a period of time, it's amazing to see that it does equal around 15 to 20% are failure systems. I mean, that was the number back in the plan for the future for the park, 15% failures. EPA estimates it at 20%. Queensbury's numbers are at 17. The state of Massachusetts during their transfer inspection program, I think, is around 18. So, that's a pretty solid number and one, to be concerned about. So thanks for backing that up.
Absolutely. It is, as Chris noted, surprisingly consistent, even among all of the other lakes that Jason reached out to. It was oddly ranging anywhere between really 12 and 20%, with the average coming in between 15 and 20. So it was interesting to see. I'm running out of hands, which is a good thing. Great. So at this point, we're going to move on to technical standards, which is going to be Joe Thuen's bailiwick. So Joe's going to do the same thing that I just did, give you a quick overview of the topics and a little bit of backstory on it. And we will do the same thing. Committee members afforded the first opportunity to provide comments and questions. And after that, then members of the public. So Joe, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you. Thanks to the committee members and certainly the technical committee folks. We've had a lot of input and a lot of influence on these standards. We've tried to keep it relatively simple and practical while also getting improved performance out of these systems. The first thing is increasing the minimum vertical separation from the bottom of an absorption system to seasonal high groundwater and bedrock. The literature shows, and we have good understanding that, as far as phosphorus reduction, which is the limiting nutrient for freshwater systems, the vast majority of phosphorus retention occurs in the soils beneath the drain field. Looking at the literature, 3 feet increasing, from 2 feet provides us significant more phosphorus retention. Looking around the basin, there are higher standards than 2 feet around the basin. Queensbury, for instance, has a 3-foot vertical separation. So we know this is not uncommon and can be done. And speaking with our technical committee, the designers in particular, they didn't raise concerns that, raising to 3 feet is, just totally impractical. And also reaching out to Dr. William Robertson. One of his papers is on our webpage. He's been studying wastewater systems for his entire career. I reached out to him and said, you spent an entire career looking at this kind of stuff. If you were interested in retaining phosphorus to the best availability, what's your recommendation? And his recommendation, consistent with these other things, was also, if you want to be conservative and retain phosphorus, increase that vertical separation up to 3 feet. And so that's what we've proposed, and we think that'll be good environmentally, but also not overly burdensome from a design standpoint. Next on the list is not allowing a reduced trench length or absorption area for enhanced treatment units. This is a standard that's in the New York City watershed. So basically 75A, Appendix 75A allows for a reduction in field size when you use an ETU. But as I was just talking about, the soils are so very important for phosphorus retention, and ETUs in particular, they do a lot of good, but they're not geared specifically toward phosphorus. So we don't want to see that reduced absorption area for ETUs. We want to use as much soil as we can. So we're going to mirror New York City on that. With respect to vertical and horizontal setbacks, when these standards can't be met, standards that are particularly important for environmental protection, phosphorus retention, we'd be seeking that when a variance or waiver is required, that the system have a greater performance than a standard conventional system. That we try to do better with phosphorus removal technologies or enhanced treatment units or some other measure that goes above and beyond sort of commensurate with any variance that be sought to ensure that, in tough situations where variances need to be granted, we're not seeing an environmental compromise, but the system would compensate for that with greater performance. Item D, redevelopment. We've heard a few stories where we get a tear down rebuild and the same septic system is used, which might be 30, 40 years old. Looking at that just from a common sense perspective, it doesn't seem appropriate, if you're putting that type of resource into redeveloping a project, redeveloping a site, it makes sense to revisit that wastewater system and make sure that it's as modern as the house and doing as good a job as it can to protect the lake. Lastly, and along the same lines of soil, the soils under an absorption bed are like a filter, right, that are going to trap and retain phosphorus. And when we replace a filter bed, sometimes folks just have a replacement spot, and so that original bed will sort of remain in place. As the chemistry of that bed changes by not having effluent go into it, it's possible for that phosphorus to leach out long term. And also there's always the possibility of a construction project reusing those soils for something else that's inappropriate and sort of releasing that phosphorus that was otherwise retained. So just a simple thing here, and it's not uncommon in the construction field, that when we decommission an absorption field, leach field, that we remove those soils that contain all that phosphorus that's been introduced to the basin and bring in some new soil, just so we're, it's not really effective if we trap it for 30 years, come up with a new drain field and just allow the phosphorus to leach out for the next 30 years. So if the soils do a great job of trapping it, so let's basically remove that filter when it's done with its useful life. So with that summarizes quickly the technical standards that we're looking at, and I'll turn it back over to Dave to field some questions.
Hey, thanks, Joe. As everybody, I believe, on this committee knows, a few months ago, we set up a technical subcommittee that largely consists of engineers, code enforcement officers, and technical folks, specifically because of these issues. It also, of course, included Tom Snow from DEC and Kevin Kenyon from DOH. And we've met on a pretty robust schedule every 2 weeks or so, just trying to get some of these questions answered, because it's the concern of the commission not to have unintended consequences by requiring something that would come into stark contrast with the approval processes at town, county, or state levels. I think we're getting pretty close to that, and I thank everyone on that committee for spending so much time with us to make sure we have a program that is going to work and has the value that we're looking for it to do. So thanks, Joe, for that background, and we'll open it up to our committee members. Any comments, questions from anybody on our committee to start open?
Boy, that's good.
We nailed it on the first try. Look at that. Wow. Let me see. Tom Jarrett, I see.
I overwhelmingly support the technical standards that were developed by this group and the technical subcommittee. As I mentioned yesterday, though, Dave, I support more specifically the idea of when you need a variance because you can't meet vertical or horizontal separations, in addition to an ETU, I think you should provide some kind of enhanced phosphorus removal, meaning it might mean extra vertical separation or some other kind of proprietary unit. But other than that, I support them wholeheartedly.
Thanks, Tom. The committee has been spending a fair amount of time in looking at what are the best ways to remove phosphorus. That's really the concerning issue to us. And overwhelmingly, it seems that soil is the primary driver of phosphorus removal, and that phosphorus filtration or removal systems are still on the emerging side and not readily available. And also they're quite maintenance challenging, as I understand from our research. So I think that makes sense. If people need to have an improved system, some extra soil is both cost effective and better for the long term. So I think that was the conclusion of the committee, if I'm not overstating. So thanks, Tom. Chris Novitsky.
Thanks, Dave. And I also echo what Tom just said. I think these are some very good standards to put in. And I thank Joe for his summary on this. It really affects it. And I've had a few exchanges with Joe, and I've expressed my concern about the importance of soil as well as soil volume. And I think one thing that I haven't had the opportunity to follow back up with you or Joe about, the one concern that I do have, and I think we've got to take a look, some of the towns with existing septic programs around the lake, limit the location of raised systems. So I'm glad we're going for a increased vertical separation, 3 feet. But when you put that 3 feet in an area, 100 feet from the shoreline or less, because of the tapering that may be required, you're going from 3 feet back down to 1 between the system and the lake. So you don't have that soil area for the volume of treatment. So you're still getting compromised. It's almost like running that into a funnel. So you're funneling it down to a still compromised soil area. So there are regulations, I think, within Bolton, within Queensbury, that limit the location of built-up systems to nothing within 200 feet of the lake. So, so I think I want you to consider that, and I will be following up with you and Joe on that, because I do feel that I think we're going to have another meeting as well to discuss that. But I do support these standards. I'm glad to see the approach that the New York City watershed has regarding enhanced treatment, and not accepting that credit for the bed area. So thanks.
Thanks, Chris. We've had some discussions among, I think, both committees of allowing some latitude of flexibility between the design engineer and the approving authority to do the best they can on sites. And the more we specify in regulation, the more it could tend to box in and remove effective solutions. So we have to find that balance. And we've talked about that a little bit. We're, as you know, always open to new ideas, but we need to have the people in the room like John Graham and like Dave Fadden that will know, hey, if you do this, here's the consequence of that. You're simply going to push everybody into a variance. And that's going to be challenging for everyone. But I certainly understand your topic. And I think you're right, Chris, we're going to keep talking about that. Other committee members, questions and comments? Tom, is that a new hand or an old hand?
Oops, sorry. That's an old hand.
Okay. Then I'm not seeing any other committee member or commissioners. So that being the case, I do see Carol Collins's hand.
Yeah, Dave, we spoke a little bit a minute ago about failures and what they mean. And I want you to remember that failures, how you define a failure is you have to be careful because we're not really looking at nutrient loads when we just talk about failures. So if a system is, failed because of, it doesn't have the right separation distance, what you're really talking about is an extra loading of nutrients. So I'm not getting my point out, but let me come back to that. When you wrote on number B, and no reduction in filtration bed lengths with enhanced treatment units, that's also including Elgin systems as well, other package systems like that, right? Joe, anybody? Because they're not an ETU, they're.
That'd be more of a Sean question or a Tom Jarrett kind of question.
That was in my white paper, and basically it was section G and I or something like that in the watershed, New York City watershed, and they included both of those issues. I just want to make sure that they're both included, whether you're doing an ETU or an Elgin system. And Chris, they're described a little different. I can't remember what the word is, but anyway. Is anybody?
I would offer that we haven't vetted that fully yet. That's.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, so do you understand that Elgin systems, they were analyzed so that, but never with regard to phosphorus. They just gave them the ability to cut it back by 33%, but not because of phosphorus, just because they thought they were doing a better job for E. coli or something like that. So I called the Elgin people and they said, yeah, we never tested any of this for phosphorus. So so we're giving them away the 33% reduction in trench length that we shouldn't be. And that's New York City also discarded this as well. Yes, Tom?
None of the NSF 40 systems are certified for removal of phosphorus. It's solids and BOD. So don't single out Elgin. So the program would be that if you're taking credit for an ETU, you can't do it under this program.
Yeah, but Elgin, and I think the one that begins with a P, I can't think of the word right now. Maybe it's, the other kinds where you put in the packages. They both were singled out in the New York City watershed regulations.
Some of them phosphorus better than others, but not NSF 40 does not deal with phosphorus.
Right, and we don't, and that's the whole point. Any NSF 40. Okay, that was an important point.
Let me finish that up. Even though Sean's right, we haven't fully vetted it. Under this program, what Chris is saying and what we're advocating so far is that you don't get that credit that DOH allows for ETUs. You don't get that 33% credit under this program.
Yeah, or I think the point is the gravelless absorption systems is the other one that gets the credit, right?
Yes.
And we haven't.
I couldn't think of the word gravelless.
Yeah, we haven't fully discussed that yet.
Okay.
25% credit, and you're right, we haven't discussed that.
Yeah. Okay, just keep that in mind. The other thing is this, when Dave, I think you just said that, or no, Joe, you said that when you talked to Dr. Robinson, that he suggested the 3-foot vertical separation. And in my conversations and also in the white paper, I referenced his suggestion that the horizontal separation be 300 feet. So I'm glad you're looking at the 3-foot separation, but also keep in mind that the best result comes with 300 feet of horizontal separation from water bodies. That's his recommendation. So that's an important point, and it really goes to the fact why we should expand and look at properties outside of the CEA area. Okay, That's it. There's something else, but that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Harrison, welcome. You have some thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess I'm impressed with what's going on here as a Town of Queensbury Health Board and variance approving for this stuff. I've been trying to spin up on the various aspects, including Carol's white paper. And my caution to this group is that the New York City waiver is based on some assumptions that may or may not be applicable to us, specifically a municipal water system that doesn't want to filter, which, you know, we require municipal water to be filtered on Lake George. So we're not, I think we may be looking at apples and oranges. Not that I'm saying that we shouldn't pursue this, but I got to tell you, the smartest guy that I have come in contact with regard to water is Chris Harrington, and I had he's our wastewater manager at Queensbury, very knowledgeable, strong engineer, and he is familiar with the New York City situation, and he's saying it's apples and oranges. So just a word of caution as we go forward and try to figure out how to design these things. And I would get Chris Hatton and Chris Harrington involved in some of these discussions because you want to build a consensus that we're all on board. And, you know, Chris Harrington would make the case that we're comparing apples and oranges.
Thanks, Harrison. I can certainly reach out to him and have the conversations that we've been having for a little while now and get his input. That would certainly be valuable. I'll do that tomorrow. Thank you.
And Dave, this is Tom Snow from DEC. Just to, I guess, maybe provide, you know, that New York City watershed program is one of my program areas here at DEC. So, well, I guess you can maybe make the argument it's an unfiltered drinking water supply. I think a lot of the tenets and understandings that we've learned and gained in the New York City watershed are not only applicable to Lake George, but other areas as well, particularly from a septic system perspective. So while the overall goals may be not the same, I think the resultant outcome would tend to be similar, at least from my perspective here at DEC.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, looks like we've exhausted our hands up on this topic. Let me see if I'm missing anybody otherwise. Okay, very good. Thank you for your comments. With that, we're going to move on. Oh, by the way, welcome Chairman Parker. He was unable to join early on, but thankfully he's here now. So thanks, Ken. We're moving on to item, let me see, 4, I believe it is, next steps. So just go quickly through this. We've confirmed some of this with our council this morning. The next Park Commission meeting is on January 25th, where we propose to begin the seeker process, which includes the completion of the seeker environmental assessment form, the long form. We're going to continue our outreach to the property owners within the area that we're talking about, and certainly the media. The more people that know about this, the better. It's been a commission goal longer than I've been around to make sure that everybody's fully aware and a part of the process, so we get the best ideas and input that we can. Then we're hoping to finalize some draft internal regulations. We're working almost daily with DEC and Department of Health on that right now, and I think we're getting fairly close. And after we initiate the process formally in January, the end of January, that is most likely going to initiate the more formal documentation identified here, the regulatory impact statement and the others. And we expect that to continue for several months. If you've been around for any of the commission's last regulatory initiatives, I've been here for 4 of them. All of our initiatives tend to take place during the summer months because we know that's when the populations are here and we can get the proper feedback. The last thing that any agency wants to be accused of is doing something under the cover of night. And we've never done that, certainly not in my time here or before that I'm aware of. So it is going to take a little bit longer than some of the people on the call here might have anticipated, but we've said from our first meeting, it is much more important to get it right and to have the buy-in from the public than to get it quickly. And so we're going to spend the next few months getting all the appropriate documentation, getting all the people that are going to be impacted by the program as aware as possible that we can. And then we're going to most likely, I would assume, and this is really up to our council, sometime in the June area, be looking at the public involvement in terms of the public hearings and those types of items. So that's kind of the current draft schedule. From my perspective, this program has gone very smoothly so far because we've had a lot of very good people involved. And I think right now, a great benefit to the commission is the important partners that we have, the municipalities, the counties, and New York State seems to be fully behind the idea of what we're trying to achieve here to protect Lake George. And I think that's critical and get something else done. And also, I see Kathy Munsell, we have our business community. If we don't have the support of those folks, the last thing we want is direct opposition because they're not aware of the program and they don't understand it and the benefit of it. So if we're not doing that, then that falls back onto the commission. So we're always open to the best ideas about how to outreach and how to get those ideas back. And I think we're doing a fair job of that so far, as evidenced by the comments that we've had here today. And I think the work products that we've achieved so far. So with that, that's kind of a summary of our next steps. Are there any questions that I may or may not be able to answer? Because this is really more of a legal topic, but does anybody have any questions or thoughts on our next steps before we turn it back over to Chairman Parker? Ken, I am not seeing any, so no, I see Ginger Kunzel at the bottom.
Okay.
Oop, you're back on mute, Ginger.
Okay, I moved my arrow away from it now. Yeah, I'm amazed and very impressed and glad at how quickly this is all moving forward, and you know, the consensus that has been reached, and just the experts that the subject matter experts on many different facets that have been involved. It's really heartening to watch this. So congratulations and thank you, because I know it's a lot of time that everybody's been putting into this. One thing you might want to make a note of to consider as part of a communication strategy, I find that FAQs are always incredibly helpful. People, you know, the papers, great to have all that detail, and you know, that can even be one of the questions, where can I get more information, put the websites and direct links and everything. But it's almost like an executive summary that's easy to read, that's like a bulleted thing. And I would, you know, and I'm glad to help. I'm a communications professional. I'm happy to help in any way that I can if you need it or want it. So.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea, Ginger, and I will definitely take you up on that. That is a fantastic idea. It hasn't even crossed my mind. So yeah, we'll probably draft some questions and answers, and maybe I'll float those by you and see what you think. If you do this kind of thing for a living, that would be great.
Sure.
So,
thanks.
Anybody else? Questions, thoughts, comments before we turn it back over to Ken? Ken, it looks like it is back to you.
Well, I'm late to the party this meeting, and I apologize for that. Involved great grandchildren, but I'm glad I heard what Ginger had to say, because I too am amazed at the mileage that we've gotten so far. I feel as if the elf has been kicked off the shelf this month, and we got so much, and it almost looks like a completed product, and we just find out if we can sell it to the public now. So with that, again, I thank you all and wish you all a happy new year.
Very good. Thanks, Ken. Thank you, everyone.
Adios.
Happy New Year.
Take care. Bye now.
Well done.